At 20,000 feet above the frozen sky of Europe, a lone fighter pilot tightened his grip on the controls, unaware that the next few seconds would define his legacy forever. The roar of engines, the vibration of metal, and the smell of fuel surrounded him as war raged beneath the clouds. This was not just another mission. This was a hunt. He had been trained to chase, to destroy, and to survive at all costs. Every enemy plane in his sights was a threat, and every pull of the trigger was considered duty. Yet on this day, something unexpected entered his cockpit: hesitation. Ahead of him, through the cracked canopy glass, he spotted an enemy aircraft limping through the sky. Smoke poured from its engines, pieces of metal trailing behind like falling leaves. The enemy plane was barely flying, struggling to stay airborne. One clean burst of gunfire would end it instantly. His finger hovered over the trigger, muscles tense, heart pounding. This was the moment pilots dreamed of, a guaranteed kill. But as he closed the distance, he noticed something strange. The enemy plane wasn't maneuvering. It wasn't fighting back. It was fleeing, or maybe simply trying to survive. As he drew closer, the pilot leaned forward and looked into the cockpit of the damaged aircraft. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. Inside were young faces, fear-filled eyes, a wounded crew trying desperately to make it home. These were not monsters. They were men, just like him. In that instant, the war felt very far away, and humanity felt painfully close. His training screamed at him to fire. His orders demanded obedience. His nation expected victory. But his conscience whispered something else. He imagined himself in their place, flying a broken machine, praying for mercy from an unseen enemy. Time slowed. The sky felt silent. This was no longer about war. This was about choice. In the cockpit, sweat dripped down his face as his aircraft lined up perfectly behind the enemy. One squeeze of the trigger and history would never remember their names. Instead, the pilot made a decision no one had trained him for. He eased his finger away from the trigger. What happened next was not recorded in official war reports. It wasn't celebrated with medals or parades. But decades later, this single act of mercy would echo through history as one of the most powerful moments of World War II. This is not a story of victory or defeat. This is a story of humanity, brought to you by Sky Legend WW2. The enemy aircraft struggled violently as it descended, each second threatening to become its last. Inside the cockpit, alarms screamed and gauges flickered wildly. The pilot behind them could see everything now: the torn fuselage, the shattered tail section, and the desperate movements of the crew inside. They were not turning back to fight. They were simply trying to escape death. He matched their speed, staying close, so close that he could see the pilot's helmet and the gunner slumped in pain. The war had taught him to see targets, not people. But today, the illusion had broken. These men were trapped in a burning coffin of metal, and he held their fate in his hands. Radio silence filled the air. No commands from headquarters. No voices to guide him. This decision was his alone. He remembered his instructors telling him that mercy had no place in aerial combat. That hesitation meant death. That enemies deserved no sympathy. Yet none of those lessons explained how to kill men who could not fight back. He flew alongside the enemy plane now, so close that their wings almost touched. The enemy crew noticed him. Panic spread across their faces. They expected gunfire. They expected the end. Instead, they saw something unimaginable: the pilot beside them was not firing. He raised his hand slowly, gesturing toward the horizon. At first, they didn't understand. Then it became clear. He was letting them go. Moments passed that felt like hours. Finally, the damaged aircraft dipped its wings gently, a silent sign of disbelief and gratitude. The pilot watched as it limped away toward distant land, vanishing into the clouds. He remained alone in the sky, shaken by what he had done. Returning to base, his mind raced with fear. Had anyone seen him? Would he be court-martialed? Would mercy be punished as betrayal? War had rules, and he had broken them. But deep inside, something felt right. For the first time since the war began, he felt human again. This moment would never be written in official logs. No medals would be awarded. No speeches would mention it. Yet somewhere beyond the clouds, lives continued because one pilot chose compassion over command. This is the kind of story Sky Legend WW2 exists to tell, the untold moments where humanity defied war. Years passed. The war ended. Cities rebuilt. Flags changed. The pilot returned home carrying memories no one could see. He lived a quiet life, never speaking of that mission. In a world obsessed with heroes and kills, his greatest act remained a secret. Across the ocean, the crew of the spared aircraft also survived the war. They too carried the memory of that day, the moment death chose mercy. For decades, they wondered about the man who let them live. Why had he done it? Who was he? Did he survive? Fate had one last surprise waiting. At a veterans gathering years later, former enemies gathered not as soldiers, but as old men. Stories were shared. Tears were shed. And then, in a quiet corner of the room, two men locked eyes, recognition flashing instantly. They didn't need words. The pilots stepped toward each other slowly, disbelief trembling in their hands. One had once held the power of life and death over the other. Now they stood as equals. Without speaking, they embraced. Witnesses would later say the room fell silent. That day, the story finally came into the light. Not as a tale of war, but as proof that even in humanity's darkest hours, light can survive. The pilot who spared his enemy had no regrets. Only gratitude, for choosing to remain human when the world demanded brutality. Sky Legend WW2 shares this story not to glorify war, but to remind us that courage sometimes means. Historians would later debate the moment endlessly. Some called it weakness. Others called it treason. But many understood the truth, it was bravery of the highest kind. The pilot risked punishment, dishonor, even execution. Yet he chose mercy. In war, killing is easy when humanity is stripped away. What is difficult is seeing the enemy as human. That pilot saw past the uniform, past the propaganda, and saw himself. Military records don't measure mercy. They count victories, not lives spared. Yet stories like this survive because they resonate deeper than statistics. They remind us that war is fought by humans, not machines. Sky Legend WW2 exists to preserve these moments, the choices history almost forgot. Today, the sky is peaceful where engines once roared. But the story remains, carried through generations as a reminder that even one decision can change lives. The pilot never sought recognition. He didn't need it. The lives he saved were enough. In a world that often celebrates destruction, this story stands apart. It proves that mercy can exist even at 20,000 feet, even in war. And sometimes, the greatest legends are born not from violence, but from compassion. This has been Sky Legend WW2, where history meets humanity.